While the world was watching the usual political drama, a financial revolution was quietly brewing. In a move that sent shockwaves through the global economy, Donald Trump, a man who once called crypto a scam, unveiled a plan to not just embrace cryptocurrency, but to use it for American dominance. This is the story of how his administration's 2025 crypto turnaround began, a coordinated campaign of executive orders and strategic appointments that aim to flip the global financial system on its head. It's a story of immense power, unimaginable wealth, and a high stakes gamble to secure America's spot as the leader in the new financial age. For years, the US had been sending mixed signals on crypto, to put it mildly. It was a mess of regulatory chaos and turf wars between agencies. The vibe from Washington was clear. Crypto was a threat to be contained, not an opportunity to be seized. The previous administration had talked a lot about reviewing digital assets, but to the industry, it felt less like a thoughtful inquiry and more like the lead up to a crackdown. The narrative was all about risk, illicit finance, and consumer harm, with almost no talk about the revolutionary potential of the tech itself. This hostile environment created a massive problem. The engine of digital finance was sputtering in the very nation that birthed the internet. But as the political winds shifted in 2024, a new force was waking up. An industry that had been politically naive was now armed with hundreds of millions of dollars and a single mission: rewrite the rules in Washington. And they found an unlikely champion in a man who had once tweeted that Bitcoin was based on thin air. What happened next was a stunning reversal, a masterclass in political maneuvering that would not only save the US crypto industry, but put it at the center of American economic strategy. This is how Trump didn't just join the crypto revolution, he aimed to lead it. To get just how big of a deal 2025 was, we have to rewind the clock. Before Trump's second term, the American crypto scene was a battleground. It wasn't just uncertain, it was openly hostile. The feeling in the halls of power was deep suspicion. Regulators, led by a particularly aggressive SEC, had adopted what the industry called regulation by enforcement. Instead of creating clear rules, the government's approach was basically to sue first and ask questions later. This created a climate of fear you could feel across the industry. Major crypto firms, including some of the world's biggest exchanges, found themselves in the government's crosshairs. The SEC claimed that most cryptocurrencies were unregistered securities and should follow laws written nearly a century ago, long before anyone had dreamed of a decentralized ledger. This stance basically criminalized much of the industry's work overnight. The message was simple: comply with rules that don't fit or face the full power of the US government. The impact was immediate and devastating. Legal bills soared into the hundreds of millions. Companies that should have been building the future of finance were now stuck in existential legal fights. Adding to the chaos was the looming threat of a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. The Federal Reserve was actively researching a digital dollar. Proponents said it could make payments better, but the crypto world and privacy advocates saw it as a Trojan horse for government surveillance and control. The idea of the government having a direct ledger of every single transaction you make was a dystopian nightmare for many. It felt like the exact opposite of what Bitcoin stood for: individual freedom and control. The fear wasn't that a CBDC would compete with crypto, it was that it would be designed to replace it, putting the government at the absolute center of your financial life. This 1 2 punch of aggressive enforcement and the specter of a government controlled digital currency created what many called a crypto winter made in Washington. Innovation was frozen solid. Venture capital, once flowing freely into American crypto startups, started to dry up or look for friendlier countries. Entrepreneurs had a terrible choice: stay in the US and risk getting sued into oblivion, or move their companies, jobs, and ideas to places like Dubai, Singapore, or Switzerland, which were rolling out the red carpet. Many chose to leave. The US was actively exporting one of the most important new industries of the 21st century. It was a strategic blunder that threatened to hand over the future of finance to other countries. As the regulatory walls closed in, something inside the crypto industry snapped. The coders and entrepreneurs who long believed their tech was above politics had a rude awakening. They realized you can't just invent a new system and expect the old one to step aside. You have to fight for your right to exist. And in Washington, that fight is fueled by money and influence. The 2024 election was the moment the crypto industry grew up. It went from a scattered group of startups to a political powerhouse. The numbers are staggering. The crypto sector poured an unprecedented amount of money into the election. Reports cite figures between $119 million and nearly $250 million. This wasn't just a few donations, it was a coordinated, industry wide push to make crypto a major political issue. Super PACs like Fairshake, funded by giants like Coinbase and Ripple, spent tens of millions on ads, targeting key races and making it clear that being anti crypto would hurt you at the polls. For the first time, candidates were being judged on their vision for digital assets. This spending spree didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a direct response to the war being waged by the previous administration, and it found a very receptive audience in one particular candidate, Donald Trump. During his first term, Trump had been skeptical of crypto, famously tweeting that it was based on thin air. But as the 2024 campaign heated up, he smelled an opportunity. He saw a passionate, motivated, and very well-funded group that was being pushed away by his opponents. In a series of calculated moves, Trump began to pivot. He started speaking at Bitcoin conferences and meeting with industry leaders. He framed crypto not as a threat, but as a symbol of innovation and freedom, a direct challenge to the establishment he railed against at his rallies. He started crafting a powerful new narrative. He declared his ambition to make America the crypto capital of the world and vowed to protect the right of Americans to own their digital assets. Crucially, he promised to never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency. This was music to the crypto community's ears. It was a complete 180 from his old stance and a direct rebuke of the regulatory assault they were under. Trump was positioning himself as the industry's savior, the one leader willing to stand up to the DC swamp that was trying to crush them. The agitation was hitting a fever pitch. The industry had a clear problem: regulatory hostility, and now they had a potential champion. The 2024 election became, in many ways, a referendum on the future of crypto in America. The industry had put all its chips on the table, betting that a change in leadership was their only path to survival. The moment Donald Trump was sworn into office in January 2025, the crypto world held its breath. They didn't have to wait long. Just 3 days into his presidency, on January 23rd, 2025, Trump signed a major crypto related executive order that effectively wiped the slate clean. It sent a powerful signal that the days of cautious, risk focused policy were over. The new official policy of the United States was to support and promote digital asset technologies. The executive order did two other huge things. It established a new President's Working Group on Digital Asset Markets, tasked with creating a clear federal framework for crypto within 180 days. This wasn't another endless study, it was a fast tracked mission for regulatory clarity. At the same time, the administration's policy delivered a major blow to the CBDC. While not explicitly banned in the order itself, the White House made its position clear. It would oppose the creation of a central bank digital currency in the United States. For the crypto community, this was a monumental victory, removing what they saw as the single greatest threat to a decentralized financial future. But policies are only as good as the people who enforce them. The next phase involved a complete overhaul of regulatory leadership. The old chairs of the SEC and CFTC, seen as antagonists, were replaced with known crypto allies. Paul Atkins, a former SEC commissioner with free market views, was appointed the new SEC chair. This was a seismic shift. Atkins immediately signaled a new day at the SEC, declaring that policymaking would no longer be driven by ad hoc enforcement actions. In a landmark speech on July 31st, 2025, Atkins unveiled Project Crypto, a commission-wide push to modernize securities rules. He stated his goal was to make America the crypto capital of the world and directed his staff to draft clear rules, a stark contrast to the old strategy of regulation by enforcement. The SEC also established a new crypto task force, with outspoken crypto advocate and Commissioner Hester Pierce, known as Crypto Mom, playing a key role. The effects were felt almost instantly. The intense pressure from regulators began to ease. Several high-profile lawsuits against major crypto companies were paused or dismissed. The Department of Justice even disbanded its national cryptocurrency enforcement team. The message from the top was clear. The war was over. The new mission was to bring the industry and its capital back home. The administration's policy was to ensure crypto companies had fair access to banking, ending the financial blockade that had crippled so many firms. The takeover was not just underway, it was accelerating at a breathtaking pace. What we're seeing here is a complete realignment of government power happening at a speed that is almost unheard of in Washington. We've gone from a government actively trying to shut down an industry to one that is now its biggest champion. But this was just the beginning. The next step was to make this revolution permanent by enshrining it in law. And that's where the Genius Act comes in, a piece of legislation that would change the game for the most critical component of the crypto ecosystem, stablecoins. This is a pivotal moment in the story. And if you want to understand how this new financial world is being built brick by brick, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We break down these complex power shifts every week, giving you the insights you need to navigate the future of finance. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. While executive orders can change the direction of the ship, they can also be reversed. To make the crypto turnaround permanent, the Trump administration needed to pass a law. The centerpiece of this strategy was a bill with a very ambitious name, the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act, or the Genius Act. Stablecoins are the bedrock of the crypto world. They're digital tokens pegged one-to-one with a currency like the U.S. dollar. Think of them as the poker chips of the crypto casino, letting traders move between volatile assets like Bitcoin without cashing out to a traditional bank. You can't overstate their importance. In 2024, stablecoin transaction volume surpassed that of payment giants like Visa and MasterCard. But for years, they operated in a legal gray area, a source of constant anxiety for regulators. The Genius Act, signed into law on July 18, 2025, was designed to solve this problem once and for all. It created the first ever federal framework for stablecoins in the US, built on a few key pillars. The most important was a strict reserve requirement. The act mandated that issuers back every single token one for one with high quality assets like US dollars or short term treasury bills. This was meant to prevent a bank run, ensuring a user could always redeem their stablecoin for a real dollar. The law also set up clear rules for who could issue these digital dollars, requiring them to be licensed and supervised by federal regulators. The Genius Act also demanded transparency, forcing issuers to publicly disclose their reserves every month and undergo regular audits. And to fight crime, it required issuers to follow the same anti-money laundering rules as banks. But one of the most significant parts of the Genius Act was a single sentence that ended a years-long battle between regulators. It clarified that payment stablecoins are not securities. This was a massive win for the industry. It took jurisdiction away from the aggressive SEC and gave it to banking regulators, who were seen as more favorable to innovation. The strategic genius of the act was twofold. First, it gave the industry the clarity it desperately wanted. Second, it was framed as a way to ensure the global dominance of the US dollar. By requiring US dollar backed stablecoins to be backed by US debt, the law would create a huge new source of demand for US treasuries. The Genius Act wasn't just crypto regulation, it was economic strategy, codifying the crypto revolution into American law. With stablecoins regulated, the administration turned to the original crypto, Bitcoin. On March 6, 2025, Trump signed another landmark executive order, this one creating the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. This move officially shifted Bitcoin from being just a speculative asset to a strategic national resource like the country's oil reserves or its gold at Fort Knox. The order established the reserve under the Treasury Department, seated with all the Bitcoin the US government had seized in criminal cases over the years. Crucially, the order stated that Bitcoin in this reserve shall not be sold. This reversed the old policy of auctioning off seized Bitcoin as fast as possible. The message was clear. The US government was now a long-term Bitcoin holder, or HODLer. While the exact amount of Bitcoin held by the US was a secret, mid-2025 estimates suggested the government held nearly 200,000 BTC. The order also authorized the Treasury to look into budget-neutral strategies for acquiring more, and rumors even swirled that the government might consider selling gold to buy Bitcoin, a radical idea that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier. This sent shockwaves through global finance. The US was now legitimizing Bitcoin as a strategic asset. This triggered a game theoretic race among nations. If the US was treating Bitcoin like digital gold, could any other country afford not to? Reports emerged that dozens of other nations were exploring their own Bitcoin reserves. However, this bold crypto takeover didn't happen without controversy. As the administration rolled out these incredibly favorable policies, watchdog groups and political opponents raised serious questions. They pointed out that the crypto industry had just spent hundreds of millions of dollars to support pro-crypto candidates, including Trump. Now, that same industry was being rewarded with a dream regulatory environment. Critics, including prominent Democratic lawmakers, called it a classic case of pay for play politics. They argued that the president was using the power of his office to reward a new class of wealthy donors. The speed of the policy changes, the appointment of industry allies to key posts, and the easing of enforcement were all pointed to as evidence that the game was rigged in favor of a powerful special interest group. The White House vehemently denied any quid pro quo, insisting the policies were about securing America's financial future and fostering innovation. Secretary of the Economy Chair Paul Atkins, when questioned, stated that his agency would enforce the law without favoritism. But the perception of a conflict was powerful, and it cast a shadow over the administration's entire crypto agenda. Was this a visionary plan for America's future, or was it a president rewarding his biggest new supporters? The story of Trump's 2025 crypto turnaround is a lesson in power, politics, and technology. In less than a year, the US went from one of the most hostile places for crypto to its most powerful champion. Through a series of executive orders, new laws, and strategic appointments, the Trump administration completely re engineered America's relationship with digital assets. They ended the regulatory war, provided clarity with the Genius Act, and made a world shaking bet on Bitcoin as a strategic asset. Supporters hailed it as a masterstroke of economic strategy, a bold move that unleashed a new golden age of crypto in the US and reinforced the dollar's dominance. But the entire project is shadowed by accusations of pay to play, with critics arguing the policies were designed more for a powerful special interest group than for national prosperity. The shockwaves from this pivot are still spreading. A new financial order is being born, with the United States pushing a private sector government endorsed model for digital money. The long term consequences for the global economy, for the future of money, and for the line between public service and political influence are still unknown. But one thing is certain. In 2025, Donald Trump didn't just embrace the crypto revolution. He seized control of its direction, and in doing so, he may have changed the world forever. The question that remains is, for better or for worse? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.